That's how Somali was full. It was making it uncomfortable. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Normally when Usman is making these recordings, he always puts the date after it. I'm thinking we don't need to do that anymore because you can tell from the luggage that I'm carrying as to which day we're on. So if I've only got hand luggage, then it's an earlier video. But if I'm coming back from Pakistan, then it's much later video. And the baggage we're talking about is those under the eyes. So you can tell from as the days go on, the luggage increases and increases and increases. Alhamdulillah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا أوفوا بالعقود. All those of you who believe, fulfill your promises, fulfill your oaths, fulfill your agreements. Right from the outset. You find throughout most of the contracts, in the uqud, if you look in the books of fiqh, whenever it speaks about contracts, most are by verbal. I'm sure you've witnessed many nikah taking place in this masjid. Nothing is usually written. Anything that is written is just written as a consequence after. The act which takes place is a verbal act. Similarly, when we buy and sell, it's the verbal act which is taking place. The writing is something is just for preservation purposes. It's not that the contract is actually when you write it down, and the one that you did verbally is irrelevant. Unfortunately, many of the time we do these verbal agreements, but we don't actually give it any weight. And as believers, and sometimes, we make these excuses, we make exceptions. We don't have to fulfill this to this person or fulfill it to that person. But as Muslims, our definition is that, we're given that we're for the truth, witnesses for Allah. We are truth in our word. We are honest. These are our traits and qualities. And we're supposed to express them to everybody. Even more so when we're engaging with people who may for the first time have come across a Muslim. Rather than them having, or anybody having the interview, I hear sometimes, be careful, brother, don't buy a car off an Asian guy. Don't buy a car from a Muslim. You think, what do you mean don't buy a car from a Muslim? Surely the first person I should buy a car off is from a Muslim. Because he's going to be honest. He'll say, look, brother, there's something wrong with this, there's something wrong with that. Thank you for letting me know. I'm driving along the motorway and my engine explodes. Well, instead, unfortunately, they're the person who sort of cover everything up, jet wash the engine. But it looks like a brand spanking new engine, right? They'll tune it up, they'll do all this, they'll all do that, they'll sweeten it up on the outside. You end up buying it, and then you're cursing the poor brother 3 days later. But these are unfortunate traits which aren't really traits of a believer. They're not traits of a Muslim. The traits of a Muslim is honesty, fairness. Even saying right from the outset, brother, these are, the issues with the car. Right? This is, I know how much the car normally sells for, and it's the reason I'm giving you for this price. What is the underlying issue that we do this? And when it comes to deception, when it comes to trying to kind of swindle or whatever, it's the underlying issue is the greed. This is the illness that we have, is the greed. But when a person has greed, and greed is not something that can be satisfied. So even if you do someone over by a few hundred quid, the next day another opportunity comes, you want to do that guy over 100 quid. It's not like you did it first time, you think, I'm satisfied. It's like eating, isn't it? Have a heavy meal, for iftar, you don't feel that hungry, after Taraweeh, because you fulfilled your appetite. But greed for money is something that, even if you've just done some guy over like 5 minutes earlier, and another opportunity presents itself, brother, I really like that watch you've got. And you think, oh, mashallah, yeah, brand new. And that's it, you're off again. Yeah. You're off again, brand new, yeah. Oh God, I did this to it, I did that to it. Could feel like I'll fix that, I'll fix this or whatever. Normally they go for 12. And then you're doing ihsan on him as well. Normally they go for 1,200 because I like you, brother. I'm gonna give you two for 1,100. When you actually bought it for 500. So you've done ihsan on him on top. I'm doing you a favor as well.
It's true.
And these habits, how they've come into believers, when right at the beginning of Surah Ma'idah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, awfu bil uqud. Fulfill your agreements, fulfill your contracts. And this is how some of the Mufassirun look at this, is that if we're not fulfilling the contracts, then are we Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu? And if you flip it the other way around, because Allah says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, awfu bil uqud. So if we don't fulfill our contracts, then it's really the first part addressed to us. And, I do try my best. Yesterday, when it's all a blur, I think yesterday, we were in Leytonstone Masjid. And whenever I try to do tafsir or explain the Quran, I explain that we learn about this. It's a chronicle gathering history, but it's not a historical book. And similarly, you can do tafsir very technical. You get the Shani Nuzul, Asbabi Nuzul, the Athar al-Ma'thura, all the narrations which talk about each ayah. It's really heavy. After a while, your eyes will start getting blurred, the shutters will start coming down. And it can get very technical. And it is a very technical book as well. But it's not a book on technicalities. This book is something which we are supposed to act by in our daily lives. It's not just for the ulama. And it's not for the ulama to, extract all these technicalities and explain, this is Babi Fi'l Madi and this is from Babi Istif'al, and because of Istif'al, this is his khususiyat. And I think, yeah, mashallah, that's very good. Alhamdulillah. What is he on about? Right? That's for the ulama to sit and ponder in their little groups and in their gatherings and look at all these nuances and the beauty of the Quran and the language and everything. But for everyday normal, average guy, average Joe, he's got to be able to say that, okay, this verse, before I leave the masjid, do I do that? And really, I should just stop the tafsir there. There's no point, going through another full ruku if that first verse is something that we're not, because then the next verse, are we acting on that? And the next verse, and the next verse, and the next verse. And we say, alhamdulillah, every day, mashallah, we recite the Quran. Masjid is busy with the tilawat al-Quran. We listen to every Ramadan. There was a Khatm al-Quran in Musalla we were at late last night. And, young men reciting it from their heart. But are we understanding it? Do we sit and just reflect over that and think, forget about next man. That is he fulfilling his promises? We want to be quick to apply it to him first. Brother, you need to fulfill your oath. Forget him for now. If you knew there was £1 million in your front garden, the first thing you're going to do is start saying, everybody in the street, guys, look, there's £1 million in my garden. The first thing you're going to do is wait everyone to go to sleep, right? And then slowly you're going to creep out. You're not going to tell your wife, you're going to slowly creep out. Where are you going? No, I'm just stretching my legs, love. You just go back to sleep, right? And then you'll be slowly digging away, and then your next door neighbor of all the days will come around and say, oh, you want a hand? No, there's nothing. I just dropped something. I'm just looking for it. You see how you become so secretive when it's something of value. And astaghfirullah, that means this is not of value, because the first thing we do is give it to somebody else first. Brother, you should fulfill your oath. Wait a minute. Now, when you were digging that gold up at your front garden, then you were like so secret, you didn't want to share that with anybody. And now when it comes to this verse of the Quran, you want to share it with everybody first before acting upon it yourself. But this again is a sign of, our own understanding. So if all those of you believe, fulfill your oaths, fulfill your agreements, fulfill your contracts. If you said you're going to do that, then make sure you do that. We know even when it came to, there was a battle about to ensue, about to take place. And this shepherd who was on the outskirts, we had some sheep. And he came and he said, who are you? Addressing the Prophet, who are you? And, what are you here for? And the Prophet explained, and he was straight away drawn to it. Generally, shepherds are very simple people. They just stare at nature and they're always kind of looking at things. So he says, oh, I want to become a Muslim as well. And this is our first war booty, the sheep that I'm tending to. The Prophet said, no, you need to take the sheep back, because the agreement you took from the master was you would look after his sheep. And you're already doing khianat in your original contract. Take them back. If after the Fath comes, the victory comes, and that's a different arrangement. So, this is the Prophet ﷺ, they're in a time of need. This was when the empire was growing. It's not later when the companions would cry because they had lands in places that they would never go to after futuhat. And they were crying because they were saying, all our reward being coming in the dunya, and we've got no reward for us in the after. Whereas Sahaba who were better than us, superior than us, they passed away, they didn't even have a shroud. So maybe we're getting our good deeds in the dunya, and we're going to get nothing in the akhirah. At least they cry at that. But, maybe we've done, that he's not preserving it for us. Whereas for men who were better than us, they didn't have shrouds. So yeah, they didn't fulfill contracts, any agreement you have, whether it's with a boss, with a supervisor, whatever. If a person employs somebody, they should always employ a Muslim. Why? Because he comes on time, he does his job properly, he does what he said he was going to do. Not, they're a bunch of lazy so-and-so always look, that shouldn't be the image of a Muslim. Now, we know there's hate out there. There's going to always be hate out there. But that doesn't mean that we don't do what Allah has asked us to do. We don't repel hate with hate. We repel hate with goodness. That's the difference of a believer. You expect somebody who comes up in your face and starts shouting at you, whatever, that next man's going to pop him, he's going to hit him. But the believer is unique because he doesn't get affected by that. And that's what a person thinks, that this guy's unusual. The natural reaction is someone comes up in your face and is shouting obscenities at you, being aggressive with you. The natural reaction for any person is to repel him back, go back at him. When that person just smiles and walks away, that is a unique trait. أُحِلَّتْ لَكُمْ بَهِيمَةُ الْأَنْعَامِ. And then immediately from oaths, he goes, Allah SWT speaks about the legality. أُحِلَّتْ لَكُمْ بَهِيمَةُ, that Allah SWT has made halal for you the flesh, the meat of the animals. إِلَّا مَا يُتْلَى عَلَيْكُمْ غَيْرَ مُحِلِّ الصَّيْدِ, except that which has been recited, مَا يُتْلَى عَلَيْكُمْ, other than the animals which have been hunted whilst you are in a state of ihram. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَحْكُمُ مَا يُرِيدُ, indeed Allah judges what he wills. There was some work we did many years ago. I was working with a person who was doing, people who were coming out of prison, and he was doing sort of probation work with them, young lads, offenders. And he goes, one of the tricks that I do, he goes, normally when I come, it's naturally innate, lads, they'll have their feet up, they'll be skinning a joint, be shouting obscenities at each other, screaming and shouting. So he goes, what I do is I go and I buy hamburgers. When I buy hamburgers, because I said, lads, I got some food for you. So they say, yeah, nice, what we got? Because I chuck them out to everybody, they're about to eat it. I say, oh, the hamburgers. He goes, stop, feel like this is haram. He goes, is it? He says, yeah. He goes, what about what you're doing now? Is that halal? You're in for theft. You're in for assault. You're in for GBH. Is that halal? And this is what we call cognitive dissonance, where certain things we make halal and certain things we make haram. I don't drink alcohol. Yeah, but you smoke weed. Yeah, I know, but I don't drink alcohol. That's all right then. Yeah, good point. Yeah, you must be a mujtahid, where you to differentiate between alcohol, that you've made illegal alcohol, but you've legitimized weed. So look, you are a mujtahid. How you manage to draw a distinction between the two? One is affecting your mind, and the other one is affecting your mind. So how did you become faqih? And now differentiate. Do you do speed? Yeah, I do speed as well. Yeah, okay, but isn't that? No, that's not. What about coke? No, I don't. I do that as well. Okay, fair enough. Okay, what about acid? Yeah, I do that as well. Ecstasy? Yeah, okay. But I don't do alcohol. Yeah, okay, fair point. We draw these distinctions. Similarly with these lads, they were in prison. They're doing time in prison for assaults, for this, for that, for this, that. But they had an issue with eating a hamburger. So how do you draw that distinction? Why do you make something halal and something haram? Why do you take certain things? And when here you see, Allah SWT mentions about fulfilling your oaths, and then he says certain things he's made halal for you. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu la tuhillu sha'air wala shahr al-haram wala al-hadya wala al-qala'ida wala amin al-bayt al-haram yabtaghuna fadlan min rabbihim wa ridwana. Or those of you who believe, do not violate the symbols of Allah. Those things which Allah SWT symbols, those things which a person knows that this is something which is about Islam. Anything which is like the adhan is a symbol. Something which draws distinction straight away. The beard is a symbol. So anything of that, we should not ridicule things like that. Nowadays we sort of bring our humor into the religion as well. And we have to be very, be a bit careful. Because in a way, if we start to bring that humor in, we start to ridicule. Okay, we start to ridicule. And we have to be very careful about that. And the prohibited months. And nor the garlanded animal. Those animals that are brought, hadya, that is brought to the haram for slaughter. وَلَا آمِنُ الْبَيْتَ الْحَرَامِ يَبْتَغُونَ فَضْلًا مِنْ رَبِّهِمْ وَرِضْوَانًا إِذَا حَلَلْتُمْ فَاسْتَعْدُوا. When you become halal, then you may hunt. Now, obviously, the only things we hunt when we go for the haram is, what is it, Wendy's and what type of burger bars are there? What are they? Wendy's, Pizza Hut, whatever we're hunting for. As soon as we've done the tawaf, then, the bow and arrow comes out. Seen a Wendy's, seen a al-Bayk. Let's go, we're hunting, lads. We found it. Obviously, this is talking about a time when there's wild game, wild animals around the haram, and people would consume food in that way. وَلَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ شَنَآنُ قَوْمٍ أَنْ صَدُّوكُمْ عَنِ الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ أَنْ تَعْتَدُوا. And you should not, وَلَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ, should not force you the hatred that you have for the people that stop you from the Masjid al-Haram and that you transgress. Meaning that it's natural that when someone hates on you, what do you want to do back? Hate back. It's a natural reaction we just talked about earlier. It's a natural thing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying is that these people have stopped you from coming to Masjid al-Haram. They've stopped you from performing Umrah. They've stopped you from doing a religious act. But that shouldn't mean that you transgress. Wrong is not, if you continuously reciprocate a wrong, all you're doing is you're passing that wrong on. If you're driving and somebody wants to, coming out of a giveaway, and you look at him, you make eye contact with him, and you don't give him way. Like you stress it, make him point. Like, I ain't giving you way. Right? So he's now angry, like, that idiot. Why didn't he give me way? So the next time he gets an opportunity, he's also angry now, isn't he? So he's going to say, well, nobody gave, so I ain't going to give way. So what you've done is you've initiated an evil. And that evil will be reciprocated sometime down the road. But if you're coming down and somebody wants to, and you smile and you give them that treatment, then they get happy, they give you this treatment. Then the next time, what they're going to do?
Same.
They're going to let someone else in. So you've initiated a good, which will now reciprocate good. So Muslim is supposed to stop bad and replace the bad with good. So then that good keeps reciprocating. And we know that anybody who initiates, anybody who initiates something which is good, then he will get ajr for it for everybody that acts upon it. And anybody who initiates something which is bad, then he will get the sin for everybody who acts upon it. So this is again opportunities that we get. And Allah subhanahu says, وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى. And assist one another on goodness and piety. Meaning be a cause of goodness. Try to encourage that and join that. وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ. Do not be one where you assist one another on sin and transgression. وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهِ. And fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إِنَّ اللَّهَ شَدِيدُ الْعِقَابِ. For indeed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is more severe in punishment. حرمت عليكم الميتة والدم ولحم الخنزير وأحل لغير الله به والمنخنقة والموقوذة والمتردية والنطيحة وما أكل السبع إلا ما ذكيتم. And has been made illegal for you al-mayta. Al-mayta is any animal which is killed by natural causes or other than the zabiha. Other than the zabiha. And again, the mushrikun would argue and they would say, this doesn't make sense. Your religion makes no sense. That animal which Allah kills, you say is haram. And that animal which you kill with your own hands, you say is halal. The mushrikun would say, that animal which Allah kills, you say this is haram. So an animal which falls down naturally and dies, we can't eat it. Yeah. So a lamb's walking along and falls over, we can't eat that lamb. But the lamb that we grab ourselves with our hands and slaughter, we can eat it. So the mushrikun say this is illogical. That animal which Allah kills, you say is haram. And that animal which you take with your own hands and kill, you say this is halal. So it doesn't mean that everything you can explain in a logical way to somebody. Right? We follow what Allah has told us is halal and we follow what Allah has told us is haram. Khalas. Whether it makes absolute logical sense or not is irrelevant. It's the methodology that He's given us. So Mayta is anything which is being killed by not the means that we've been taught, which is through dhabiha, yani the slaughtering method. And this is now, obviously, you need to become a food technologist, don't you, to understand what maita is. You stand there on the aisles and 100 things on the ingredients, and you got to put your glasses on, and then EX in all this, malaki on. Then you think, oh, tabdili mahiyat, mashallah, put it inside the basket. Right? Because there's a change, chemical occurs, you suddenly become a chemistry degree and you think, okay, yeah, you know what's happening here? The alcohol is converted to an ester, so it's all good. I'm putting it in a basket. Right? In this case, it hasn't. And then, oh, look for the V sign. I said, no, don't just always look for the V sign. Why not? Because there's alcohol, and alcohol is for vegetarians as well. Good point. So now we're looking for the V sign and the anti-alcohol sign, and it's like, you're looking for so many signs, it gets so confusing. And of course, we've always got to look for the HMC sign. Well, I know you just do that if you're watching this. You're going to plug it for him every now and then, inshallah. And also blood. So blood in all its forms has been made illegal. And that's really the essence of the animal. That when we slaughter it, what's happening is, if those of you, know the human anatomy or even an animal anatomy, is that the heart is generally pumping. And when the heart is pumping, obviously, and the blood pressure drops, which obviously if you made an arterial cut, the blood pressure is going to start to drop. Then the heart pumps even more. Right? Because it's maintaining that blood pressure, which is now slowly dropping. But that's only because but it doesn't realize it's just pumping more and more blood out of the animal. And that's why Allah SWT has made this method of zabiha in order to take the blood out of the animal. Now, people might say afterwards, oh, there is some scientific basis for this because most of the diseases which come from an animal are in its blood. Now, that might have been the asal for it, but that's irrelevant. It's because Allah SWT told us, and that's enough. We can bring some wisdom to us to understand things better. Obviously, again, swine meat is the worst type of meat, both from a health perspective and also from diseases, because without trying to put you off your suhoor that you had earlier, and not that you vomit anywhere, they don't eat really good things, do they? Right? But that's not the reason why we don't eat swine. It's because Allah SWT said, وَلَحْمُ الْخِنْزِيرِ. He's made it haram. It always makes me laugh because there are some people who take words out of the Quran for names for their children. Always be careful which word you take out. They say, I found one in the Quran for my new son. Oh, where did you find it? I found it in Surah Al-Ma'idah. Did you? Where? It says there, khinzir. We're going to call it khinzir. So, I've come across people who've named their daughters Minha, Fiha. I'm thinking, sorry, what's your daughter called? Fiha. MashaAllah, it's a nice name. You don't want to, you don't want to hurt, like Safina, we got to know what that means. I've got to be careful because there'll be somebody in here. What's you on about? That's like, because when you understand what that name means and somebody introduces it, you think, oh God, MashaAllah, nice. Because you can't change the name now. A person's like 30 years old or something. So, be careful the names that you name. Even, right? There's Lat and Uzza, all sorts in the Quran. You name the child an idol, after an idol. So speak to the ulama, yeah. Find out what does this word mean. I'm thinking of naming my child this. I've seen people do it. It's a very similar to the Sikh faith as well, where they take name from the text. So they'll just look and they close their eyes and say that name. But now names are even changing. Name. I'm thinking, like, what does that mean? And then all say, oh, there's a good meaning behind it. I said, okay, do you want to explain the good meaning behind it? Because I've never heard of that name myself. And all these kind of, I don't know, what do they call them? So like they fit in well with the modern world that we live in. And what's happening is, the names I used to hear before is to remind you of somebody, a particular Sahabi or a particular prophet, and it brought back those stories. And now what's going to happen as the generations go on, this is another way where our history will disappear. So now, we got introduced to somebody yesterday, and I said, oh, brother, what's your name? He goes, Abu Bakr. So, immediately you hear the name and you remember the great, saying Abu Bakr, and you can sort of reflect on that, and it keeps the name in the society. But now, if you start changing those names and, my name's Paul or something like that, and I think, okay, now you're starting to think, well, how's that going to remind you of anything? So names are important, and also where you get the names from. And anything which is being killed for other than Allah bihi. And then we start to get these new phrases. Well, munkhaniqatu, any animal which has been strangled, meaning its oxygen has been stopped to go into its body. Well, mawqudatu, something been bludgeoned to death. Well, mutaraddiyatu, something which has been thrown down onto the ground. And also something which is something which has been caused great harm. Ma akala sabu, and anything which an animal of prey eats, illa ma dhakaytum, except that which you catch and slaughter. وَمَا زُبِحَ عَلَى النُّصُبِ, and anything which is killed on slaughters, on altars rather. This is not something which is pretty much done nowadays, apart from obviously if you go to Epstein Island. وَأَن تَسْتَقْسِمُوا بِالْأَزْلَامِ. I have to find a way to get it in there somehow. I want to keep it, sort of contemporary. You think Attila Musab's with it? Yeah. He's watching Sky News every now and then. He's watching the BBC. He's not like in the clouds. Doesn't know what's going on in the world. So, nowadays as well, what are we using to determine where we eat our food from? Are we just looking at the price? And the halal is an afterthought. So we find out, the chicken there is like, 3 for a $5 or something. And the chicken over there is like 3 for £8. So we'll go for the one 3 for a $5. Oh, but how is that a deciding factor? Shouldn't the deciding factor be the one that I want to put into my body, something which is halal, has been, somebody is sound? Nowadays you'll hear that there's so many this is good for that. And those of us who are a little bit kind of health oriented know that there's certain antioxidants in this, and there's this and this, and there's this and this, and there's this and this. But what if you put something haram in your body? It might not necessarily affect you physically, but is it not going to affect you spiritually? We're not just a physical creature. We have 3 aspects to us. We have the physical, we have the mental, we have the spiritual. So just because we don't see the impact of it on our body, because you eat a chicken from, I don't know, McDonald's, or you eat chicken from some local store that, make sure it's halal, it may look the same, it may give the same nutritional value, it may give you the same energy, it may give everything's exactly the same. But one is affecting your spiritual, one isn't affecting your spiritual. The problem is we can't see our soul and can't see our ruh. So as a consequence, we think it's the same, because we've also dismissed the ruh. We've completely taken it out of the equation. That it has no relevance whatsoever. So therefore, we need to be very careful that it's not necessarily. I remember back in the day when things like HMC or did not exist. We used to go to a farm, right? I struggled to kill a spider. I thought, how am I going to slaughter a chicken? So there was, I remember the story was, there was this huge rat in our house, one of the first houses we bought. There was a huge rat. And I still remember, I tell the kids the story now. And this huge rat, and obviously my wife was saying, this huge rat wandering about in the garden, saying, sure, sometimes women exaggerate. I thought it'd be probably this big. She was right, it was a huge rat. Okay, and I saw the huge rat running around. I thought, yeah, Allah, look at this huge rat. So she phoned the council. In those days, I'm sure the council will come out, they put some poison and everything. Now they charge you to come out, or you have to call RSPCA or something. Not RSPCA, what is RSPCA? Is it RSPCA that deals with animals? Who deals with animals? Right? Yeah. All right. I thought that's the one for the children. We get confused. Animals, children, which one is it? So they used to phone and they'd come out, they put poison. So they put poison, and this, I call it a beast. It ate the poison, and it's now dying. So obviously, me and her looking out the window, I thought, look, we're going to need to put it out of its misery. I said, I agree with you. So she's looking at me. I said, well, she goes, you need to do it. I said, what do I need to do it for? She goes, you're the bloke. I said, all right, fair enough. So I went out. So I stood above it. I had this rock. He looked up at me. I thought, yeah, I can't do this. Right, he's looking at me. The last thing he's going to see before he dies is me holding this big rock over his head. I was just putting out of his misery. So I said to her, I can't do it. She goes, no, you have to do it. And I'm looking at her, I said, well, I can't do it. I said, it's gonna blow up and all the blood. I said, nah. I said, I've got an idea. She goes, all right. So we had a wall. So I went behind the wall with the rock. And I said to her, which way? She goes, oh. So I just threw it over. Obviously, I can't see the rat. I threw it over and it landed. I said, where did it land? She goes, oh, no, I want to do it too. I said, so I'm doing this for about 10, 15 times. I didn't hit the rat once. I thought, forget it, rat. You live another day. I went inside. Eventually, it did die. But I don't know, what was I on about? What was it? Rat from the tree? Slaughtering. Right? So actually, it was so difficult about, when I found out what was going on with the poultry, I found out what was going on with the poultry. I thought, yeah, Allah, what we eat. What we eat. There was no certifying board in the 90s. There was nothing. You just had to work out yourselves. And toughen up. I used to eat. I look over it. And then you put it in this big 300-liter drum and it flaps about like mad in there. And then you're going to take it out. And then obviously I had to pluck it. I never plucked a chicken in my life. Brought this sort of like half-plucked chicken to my wife and put it on the kitchen table. Said, go sort it out. She goes, I've never cooked chicken in my life. What am I supposed to do with this? I remember the first dish we cooked. It was all funny chicken pieces. It was like, the leg was like a weird shape. The wing was a weird shape. I just eat. But luckily the kids were here. Otherwise they'd be looking like, Dad, what have you brought home, man? Is this like something that you ran over before you go home or something like that? But anyway, the point I'm making is there's a time when we had to go through all of that to make sure that we were eating. Halal, because obviously I was raising very young children. I wanted to make sure they were nurtured on halal. I wanted to make sure I was nurtured on halal. I wanted to make sure my wife was, that when I stand in prayer, that there's not some reason why my salah is refused. There is not some reason why my ibadat is refused. That's why you've always got, we say, I pray every day, but nothing changes in my life. Yeah, you're doing something wrong. That's like you wired up your house and your socket is still not working. You can't say, why is my socket not working? Because you've done something wrong, guy. You go back, go back from the, unit, the distribution board or whatever it is, and start following it through. You've obviously done something wrong. You can't say, no, that's, so it's similarly when we're offering our salah and things aren't changing in our life, something is wrong. So go back and start what you call problem solving. Yeah, start following your problem solving. Am I eating halal? Well, I go to the cheapest place I can find, and sometimes the chicken does look a bit like a cat, but I turn a blind eye to it. Find out what is it you're eating. My contracts, my transactions, how am I doing them? Am I deceptive? When I say to my boss, I'm doing 7.5 hours a day, am I doing 7.5 hours a day? All these things is making sure that I'm doing things properly. Once you've done all that, then know that things are going to change and things will change. So, these things will come only through that. اليوم يئس الذين كفروا من دينكم فلا تخشوهم واخشوني. And to this day and today, those who disbelieve, they will despair in your deen. So don't fear them, fear me. And that's always we have to bear in mind. Is always to fear Allah. You can't. There is no enemy that can damage you without the will of Allah. No one can touch you. Islam should make us brave. Islam should not make us into cowards. Islam should make us brave, because anything which is happening to any Muslim on the surface of earth is by the permission of Allah. Yes, remember that. It always happens by the permission of Allah. This is His will. This is the way He wants it to be. And we accept that His will. Yes. Of course, that doesn't mean that we just sit and do nothing. We take our action, whatever action we need to do in order to compensate for the imbalances that are going on. But that does not mean that we despair. Allah, yeah, what I, like Allah does not know. He's unaware of it. What the powers of evil are now have defeated Allah. What are we saying? This happens, everything happens by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And a verse which is, held in great esteem, even the groups would say that if we had this verse, we would celebrate this verse as a day of Eid. Al-yawma akmaltu lakum deenakum wa atmamtu alaykum ni'mati wa raditu lakum al-islam deena. Okay? According to someone in the last few verses that was revealed. On this day, I've completed for you your deen. So the deen is complete. The deen is complete. The only difference is how we apply it in different settings. That's where the ijtihad comes in. Is how do we apply it in these different settings? But the deen is complete. We can't say, there's some shortage here, we need to compensate for this or whatever. Wa atmamtum alaykum ni'mati. What does he call it? His favor. He calls it his favor. Today, Allah says, I have completed upon you my favor. وَرَضِيتُ لَكُمُ الْإِسْلَامَ. And I'm happy and I'm pleased and I have approved for you Islam as your deen. So that is done. The Prophet ﷺ has fulfilled his responsibility. What was his responsibility? To make sure that he proclaims and gets the deen to us as the messenger. And when he was on his last, on the performance of Hajj, when you see the famous, the last sermon upstairs in Qāḍī Sahib's office as well, it's on the wall there. Do read it when you go in. It's, the last sermon, he mentions it. And he asked that, have I fulfilled my duty to the people? And they said, yes, you have. And he says, bear witness, bear witness, bear witness that this is done. And when that was done, we know now that it's only a matter of time before the Prophet was going to leave this earth, because his task was not to stay behind to enjoy time with the companions, not to become victorious, not to be paraded as a king, not to be told that you will now have the keys of the Arabian Peninsula, not to be said that you are now a global leader, but to know that my job was to bring a message to you. That message is done. I do not need to be now separate from my beloved, and I can now return back. My task is done. فَمَنِ اضْطُرَّ فِي مَخْمَصَةٍ, whomsoever is compelled out of hunger, غَيْرَ مُتَجَانِفٍ لِلْإِثْمِ, without being inclined towards sin, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ, then indeed Allah is forgiving and merciful. That does not mean, obviously, that we all become, great mufassir and say, look, it just said in there that if a person is hungry, he's allowed to eat haram. This is a person who's got no access to other food. Okay, so it's practical. The religion is practical. The students do always say, Staji, if I was in the Amazon jungle and I came across a burger that was haram, am I allowed to eat? I said, yeah, first of all, what are you doing in the Amazon jungle? And secondly, why would a burger be sat in the Amazon jungle? Yeah, but what if? Yeah, what if the students with their what ifs was so ajib their what ifs? I said, what you need to do is write down your what ifs because these are, mashallah, next level what ifs. See how we can solve these what ifs if I'm in an Amazon jungle. I said, how would you contact me if you're in the Amazon jungle? I'd ring you. Well, why don't you ring someone to save you and get you out of the Amazon jungle? Why are you ringing me for? Yeah, but what if I did? Yeah, I think he was just buying time so that he didn't have to actually do his work. Yes, they ask you what is halal for them. Okay, they ask you, O Prophet alayhi salam, what is halal for them? قُلْ أُحِلَّ لَكُمُ الطَّيِّبَاتِ. Halal is for you that which is طيبات, the good things. Whatever Allah SWT has made permissible for you is good. Whatever Allah SWT has made haram for you is bad. Yes, alcohol or any form of intoxicant might give you an immediate hit, might give you a little bit of pleasure, but the long term is a serious problem. Serious problem. You know, people who say, oh, marijuana doesn't really have any, of course it does. It's a massive impact on his behavior, but he just doesn't realize it yet. Speak to the same brother 5 years later, 10 years later, and he's a completely different person. But because he's taken baby steps, he's not realized it. How many people have been, consuming alcohol and it's been a good thing for them? How many celebrities do you hear that have access to any type of drug, whatever, and then either in their, dead in their bath or dead in the floor somewhere? It's never brought any goodness. It always brings destruction. And that's why Allah has made it haram for our benefit. Not because he's, Aliyah Billah is being awkward or he's making life difficult or he doesn't want us to have a good time or anything of that nature. وَمَا عَلَّمْتُم مِّنَ الْجَوَارِحِ مُكَلِّبِينَ تُعَلِّمُونَهُنَّ مِمَّا عَلَّمَكُمُ اللَّهُ. And as regards to those hunting animals, that you've trained them, okay, in order that they seek for you what Allah has taught you. فَكُلُوا مِمَّا أَمْسَكْنَا. So eat from that which they catch for you. عَلَيْكُمْ وَاذْكُرُوا اسْمَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْهِ. And mention the name of Allah. So those, we see those nice images of this warrior. We put it on our WhatsApp profile. This warrior on his horse, and he has a falcon on his, arm, and he has a dog on his side, and he's going out to hunt. Yeah, and we think, yes, man, that's me. How good is that? And then Mrs. shouts and says, "Come down and sort this laundry. I just left my mommy away." And suddenly that little idea of being this big mujahid, trekking out into the desert with your falcon on its arm and the dog running aside just completely disappears, and you come rushing down with your apron on just to get the washing. So Allah SWT says that in some places, obviously, you've got to train your animals to hunt for you. Okay, so for those hunters amongst me, or those, washing machine fillers amongst me, right, is that if you do have a hunting dog and you train it, and you do go, I don't know, get some pellet gun or something. I don't know what you guys do in London. But you have bows and arrows, or what do you do when you're going out hunting? You go hunting and you catch the animal, and then you send your dog to collect it. If it brings it back, and it's not bitten it, it's not eaten it, then he's hunted it for you. But if he is eating it or taking something from it, then you can't consume it. Okay? But this is about those animals which are not domesticated. Obviously, you don't get a poor chicken in your back garden and say, run. Run. Where are you gonna go? And obviously, it's a tiny, obviously, I know about your gardens, they're only like 1 foot or like 1.5 foot. The poor chickens is running around you. Right? You didn't get anywhere, did you? And then you fire the arrow into it. So you're not talking about domesticated animals, because domestic animals you can grab, like I explained to you when I was hunting the poor chicken and slaughtering it. It's those animals which are not domesticated, like pheasants and all that, which is probably illegal for you to do anyway here in London. There's lots of foxes in London. I was explaining to Usman the first time I came a few years ago. It was very late at night, and I was driving along Queens Road. Loads of foxes running out. I thought, where have I come? I thought Bradford was bad. So I was like, yeah, I thought foxes going there. What the Allah? So fear Allah, inna Allah sari'ul hisab, for indeed Allah is swift in taking account. He's swift in reckoning. You don't think the little respite he's giving you is that you're gone. Okay? When that rope gets yanked, then you'll be at a loss. Then you'll be trying to say, where am I going to get this help from? Al-yawma uhilla lakum at-tayyibat. This day we have made halal for you the good things. Wa ta'amul ladhina utul kitaba hillun lakum. And the food of those which we've been given to the book has been made halal for you. That does not mean all of you rush now to go to McDonald's. So Mufti said the people of the book, their food is halal for us. McDonald's Christian. Oh, mashallah, what do? They have like a cross outside as well. Do people cross themselves as they go in? What kind of Christians are we talking about here? Yeah, it's those people of a Christian faith, and unfortunately, I hope the Church of England folk don't get too upset. Unfortunately, the Church of England is a religion that's just been made so on. Yeah, Catholicism has some remnants of Christianity. The Eastern Church has more so remnants. The Greek Orthodox has more. Those you see in Philistine, the Christians with their full beards and robes, and you can't see the difference between a Christian and a Muslim and a Jew because they look exactly the same in the sense that full beards, long flowing. Church of England was something that was constructed by the kings. We didn't want to follow the Pope. So what are you going to do? A denominational answer? You can go up to the guy behind the counter and say, "Are you Church of England or you can't?" Before I consume a chicken. So so we have to be very careful what we take, and we're very quick to take these dispensations. وَطَعَامُكُمْ حِلٌّ لَهُنَّ, and your food is halal for them. وَالْمُحْصَنَاتُ مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنَاتِ وَالْمُحْصَنَاتُ مِنَ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابِ, and the pure chaste women from the believers and the pure chaste women from those people who are given the book. So we meet Sarah at the office, and we're telling Qāḍī I'm going to do nikah with Sarah. Qāḍī Sarah? Who's Sarah? Oh, she's this last from work. Okay, mashallah. Yeah, but I read in the Quran that she's, that I could marry her. Where did you read that? Mufti was giving bayan the other day, and he said, I can marry her. She's from the book. Which book is she from? I don't know which book she reads, but she's from the book. Yani she has to be a practicing Christian woman. How does she meet you if she's a practicing Christian woman? If a practicing Christian woman is chaste. Yeah? A practicing Jewish woman is chaste. Right? So don't just make a mockery of your own deen because you want to follow your desire. Just say straight up, look, I like Sarah. We get on really well. We talk in the office. We connect. Say, look, that's fine. It's haram what you're doing, brother. Don't justify these things, And of course, many people, many of the ulama, even some of the Sahaba would look down upon this. Okay? And especially when we're living as a minority. And the fact that we also don't have much Islamic principles in our homes. So we are also living a kind of bordering on a culturally a non-Muslim life, apart from we've got names that are Muslim names and, what we do, going out, doing this, doing that, and all the rest of it. And then obviously when this lady comes in, we've obviously met her somewhere, so we've not necessarily met her in church or at the synagogue or an interfaith convention. You know where you met her, right? So obviously you met her there and you're like that, she's like that, you're going to be like that, and your children are going to be raised now. Which way they're going to go? So, please, let's not make a mockery of ourselves. من قبلكم وإذا آتيتموهن أجورهن محسنين غير مسافحين, and when you give to them their mahar in chaste, good, not in lewdness. ولا متخذي أخدان, not taking them as secret girlfriends. وَمَنْ يَكْفُرْ بِالْإِيمَانِ, and whosoever disbelieves in Allah فَقَدْ حَبِطَ عَمَلُهُ, then indeed he has laid astray or put to waste his deeds. وَهُوَ فِي الْآخِرَةِ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ, and he will be in the akhirah from the losers. وَآخِرُ دَعْوَانَا الْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ.